60 Minutes Overtime.
This week on 60 Minutes, we're doing a story about the looting of Cambodian antiquities over decades by armies of looters, many of them former Khmer Rouge child soldiers, and where these looted antiquities ended up, which is in some of the most prestigious museums around the world. This is a massive art heist. Over decades.
Yes.
Brad Gordon is an American attorney who's been working for the last 10 years for the Cambodian government, trying to track down all the stolen treasures of the country and get them back. One of the places we went with Brad Gordon and his team of investigators and some former looters was a temple on Sandak Mountain. I mean, it's like something out of, an Indiana Jones film. It's a crumbled temple in a forest. It's overgrown, and you see essentially a graveyard of pedestals. Some of them have feet still attached to them, stone feet, where a statue once stood.
The scholars are trying to figure out, and the archaeologists, why here? Why? These inscriptions talk about an enormous amount of gold being brought as gifts for the temple. So we know that this site is something very, very important.
One of the big breaks for Brad Gordon and his team of investigators was when they met a man who they named Lion. They gave him a code name for his own safety. Lion was a former Khmer Rouge child soldier who then became a looter and had a great memory, according to Brad Gordon, for what he had stolen, where he found it, what condition he found it in, how he dug it out, and where it ended up going.
And I said to him, well, what did you find in this area? And he said, well, I found a jar. I found a jar of 3 kilos of jewelry. And it was necklaces and earrings and crowns. And I said to him, did you just find one jar? And he said, no, he found hundreds.
And it's not 100% clear exactly whose gold this was, but Brad Gordon is pretty confident that it may be the jewels that once belonged to the kings and queens in what was an ancient Khmer empire that existed for hundreds of years. Douglas Latchford was a British collector. He was also the prime mover of stolen treasures out of Cambodia. Douglas Latchford published 3 books. They were sort of coffee table books with beautiful photographs of the most extraordinary treasures from Cambodia, many of which many Cambodians had never seen before. And we took those books to Angkor Wat with Brad Gordon and one of his investigators, and you can look at the reliefs that show images of ancient Khmer kings from this ancient Khmer empire, and you can see what looks very similar, if not exactly, those same jewels. So this, we think, is that, the crown.
The crown.
And this is
the armlet.
The armband.
Yeah, armband.
And then these earrings.
The earrings.
And you see even the...
Oh, I see the cross.
Yeah, the cross
here.
Yeah.
Oh, going across his chest.
Yes.
Wow. And Lion was able to use that book in particular that Douglas Latchford had published and point specifically to necklaces and other gold pieces that he himself had taken out of the ground from Sandak Mountain.
The first day I met him, I showed it to him, and he was shocked.
He hadn't seen it before.
He hadn't seen it before. And he kept, opening the book and going back to the front cover and going through and tapping and saying, I know this one, I know this one, I know this one.
Prosecutors in New York got involved in the illegal trade of Cambodian antiquities, and they built a case over years against Douglas Latchford. He died before he could be extradited from Thailand to face trial. Brad Gordon approached Douglas Latchford's daughter and over time convinced her that it was critical that she return the stolen treasures of Cambodia that her father had taken. The family of Douglas Latchford was claiming he bought these legally in a store in Bangkok somewhere.
Yes. And I think if I didn't have Lion's information, I wouldn't have been able to have that conversation.
It ended up where Brad Gordon went to England, where Julia Latchford lives, and met her in a pub.
And then after lunch, Julia's like, come with me. We went out to the parking lot. And she opened the back of the car, and there were 4 boxes there, which contained the Angkorian crown jewels. And in the back of a car.
In the trunk of a car.
Trunk of a car. And she opened up the boxes, and she took out the rings, she took out the earrings. I just was stunned, and I just felt like, wow, unbelievable that it's sitting here in a parking lot.
In a deal with the Cambodian government, Latchford's family agreed to return his entire collection, including the gold and jewelry.
The return of these antiquities is incredibly important to many Cambodians. And the return of these jewels was a major event in Cambodia. There was a huge ceremony in Phnom Penh, in the capital. We were in attendance, and there was a celebration for the return of these incredibly important jewels that Cambodians would get to see for the first time in their lives.
A lot of the Cambodians I work with have said to me they heard about this type of gold in fairy tales. They heard about it maybe from their grandparents, but they didn't believe it. Now they see it, they're like, wow.
What do you think this means to Cambodia?
I think it's restoration of national pride.